For unit rates, our objective here is to calculate unit rates from rates in mathematical and real-world problems. Now, a unit rate is a comparison of a number to one in different units. For example, here, there is 120 students in 4 classrooms. If we write this as a fraction, 120 students would go on top and then 4 classrooms on the bottom. But to figure out the unit rate, how much per classroom, you would be taking the total number of students and dividing it by the total number of classrooms. So doing my top and bottom out, four can go into 12 3 times. And then notice how you still have one more place value. So this is letting me know that the unit rate would be 30 students per classroom. Now, some vocabulary to remember is 1 unit rate, a rate that is reduced to 1 unit, because remember, unit is singular. And then complex fraction, a fraction that has a fraction in its numerator, similar to what you see here, denominator, or both. So when you're given this type of problem, notice how all they're telling you to do is take the 2/3 and then divide it by the 1/4. All they did here is put them one on top of the other instead of side by side. And remember, to divide fractions, you have to do your keep, change, and flip. Now, sometimes it's only going to be one fraction. Notice how here your numerator is 55 and then your denominator is 1/2. So how do you turn a whole number into a fraction? You just put a 1 on the bottom. Same concept. Here, the two values, one is on top of the other, similar to when we say Tebow. And here, one, they are side by side. One in front of the other, so this would be Philo. First in, last out. But again, because we're dividing fractions, don't forget when dividing fractions, you got to do your keep, change, and flip. Now, underneath your vocabulary is where we're going to do some practice problems. Identifying the unit rate and also using the unit rate. For our first example, it's telling you that when you buy a 13.8 ounce bag of hot Cheetos, you're paying $4.14. But notice what it's asking for, the cost per ounce. So notice how cost came first and then ounces second. This is letting me know the order that I'm dividing in, where my total cost is going to go on top and the number of ounces on the bottom. Now, we're going to have to do Tebow, except look at your divisor. It has a decimal. We have to make it a whole number. So 13.8 becomes 138. And then don't forget what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 4.14 becomes 41.4. Now I'm going to do my Tebow because my divisor is a whole number. So top in, bottom out. $138 cannot go into 41, but it can go into 414 3 times. Because 138 times 3 gives me 414. So this is letting me know for that bag of hot Cheetos, we are paying 30 cents per ounce. So that was pretty simple. We just go backwards and divide. Sometimes they're going to give you the unit rate, and you're going to have to figure out the total cost. So instead of dividing, we're going to actually do the opposite and multiply. Because notice here how they give you how much you're paying per ounce for the hot Cheetos, which is 30 cents. Now, you're buying a total of 21 ounces. One way of looking at it is by generating a table. 1 ounce cost 30 cents, but I'm looking for 21 ounces. So from here, how am I going to get from 1 to 21? Multiplying by 21, and what we do to one side, we do to the other. Now this is letting me know all I have to do is take those 21 ounces and multiply it by the 30 cents per ounce. I get 630, but don't forget about those decimal spaces. There's none in your first factor and 2 in your second. So that's a total of 2 decimal spaces you're moving your decimal point, giving me my answer of $6.30 for that bag of 21 ounces of hot Cheetos. Now let's look at the Takis, and we're going to compare them. Notice how for the smaller bag at Walmart, you're paying $2.55 for 15 ounces. And for the larger bag at H-E-B of 26.8 ounces, you're paying $6.70. Sometimes when we buy the bigger bag, we think we're getting the better price. But that's not always the case. So we need to know how to figure out how to calculate how much per ounce. Same thing again. We're going to take our cost and divide it by the number of ounces. So that tells me I'm taking $2.55 and dividing it by 15. So top and bottom out. Bring up my decimal point. 15 cannot go into 2, but it can go into 25 one time with a remainder of 10. I bring down my 5. It can go into 105 7 times. So for the smaller bag of Takis, we'd be paying 17 cents per ounce. Now let's look at the larger bag to see if it's cheaper per ounce. Same thing again. You're taking your cost and dividing it by the number of ounces. So here you have $6.70 divided by 26.8. But notice how our divisor has a decimal. So we have to move it 1 decimal space, making it 268. Now it is a whole number. And once again, what you do to the bottom, you gotta do to the top. 6.7 now becomes 67. From here, let's go ahead and do our top and bottom out. $268 does not go into 67 evenly, but it can go into 670 2 times, because 268 times 2 gives me 536. I'm going to borrow from the neighbor. 10 minus 6 is 4. 6 minus 3 is 3. And then 6 minus 5 is 1. Bring down a 0. 268 can go into 1,340 5 times. Now notice for your larger bag, you're actually paying 25 cents per ounce. So if you were to compare which one is the better deal, it would be our smaller one, because you're paying 8 cents less per ounce.